After I had been a program manager for GCD for a year, the deputy program manager had moved on to another position, and so we released an announcement, and the former chief engineer of GCD applied for that position and was selected for that position as the deputy program manager. When he first came in, he had a lot of ideas on how he would like to work or operate in that position. A lot of those were very, very different from how I had previously worked the position with the previous deputy project manager. And also he had a lot of ideas on doing things that were completely different from how I would have approached it. But from a being open-minded aspect, I wanted the deputy program manager to take on that responsibility and make it his own. And so therefore, he needed to be able to manage that position as he thought was the best way to operate. At the same time, long as I was getting the specific information that I thought was needed by the program, I was happy in letting that person operate in that fashion. And that way, he had buy-in into how we were operating the program. So I found that to, in the past, be very successful in other positions that I've had. And I think it worked really well in the program as the deputy program manager, and as well as other people in the program, because when you get to operate that position from your expertise and how you think it should be, I think that your organization has more buy-in and is a more efficient and effective organization. Yeah, so I guess it goes to your perception of leadership, right? So different people from different backgrounds have biases or have perceptions of how leadership should actually operate. And as an example, some people really like when a person is very decisive and very direct and makes decisions very quick. And sometimes that is required, but a lot of times it's not. Okay, and so sometimes if you make a decision very abruptly and very quickly, and you don't have, say, buy-in from the organization or from folks that are affected by that decision, you can get that work accomplished, but it may not be accomplished in a very fast, efficient, and in a quality manner. To me, and so from my perspective is sometimes if you take a little bit more time and you remain open-minded and you let people think about, what you're looking at, what is that decision that you're making, and then also listen to other people's perspectives, and be flexible to those, and try, to me personally, try to come to consensus as a group. And sometimes that's really, really difficult. But when you can come to consensus as a group on certain things, an organization or a group of people can really move very effectively and very efficiently. So sometimes I think people who think it's more efficient and effective to make a very decisive decision right off the bat. A lot of times you are not being as effective and efficient as you think they are. Sometimes it's better to, take your time, remain open, and you may start off slower, kind of like the tortoise and the hare, if I can use that analogy. But in the long run, you finish the race much faster than if you started off with the decision right off the bat. Well, I think I have a natural tendency, so I think it's easier for me to do that. I think I naturally operate that way, though I do think, though, sometimes when I get stressed, I may make decisions probably faster than I should, and so I have to remind myself in those type of situations maybe to stand back or maybe to wait a day or two before I make that decision, because that way you have time to think about things, and then also you may get some other inputs that may affect or change, how you would go. So so anyway, so to me, the way I really learned about that, I guess, is I moved up in the organization, or actually when I was at the working level, I got frustrated at work when I did not feel like I had influence into the way things were operating, and that would take away my motivation. And so from that experience when I was younger, I kind of carried that with me as I've moved into different positions, and try to remember that that you need to be open-minded and you need to take input from others. Again, so it leads to more satisfaction, I believe, for people at the working level, or your people who work with you, to have that. So I think I have a natural tendency to do that, but I think my work experience has shown that has worked for me as far as if I've moved to different positions in the NASA organization. As a project manager, you're a little, how do I want to say, you have schedule and you have cost and you have more, I want to say, tactical issues that you have to deal with. You also have, I don't want to say tactical and I don't want to say strategic, but issues that you need to look for that are coming, and you have to prepare for those. And so you work at one level as far as a project manager. When you move to program management, you also have to me, work at what I would call a higher level, that you don't have to make decisions as fast as you do when you're a project manager, okay? Because you're working at a different time scale in program management. And so you have to make a determination when you get involved in particular issues or not. Whereas in a project manager, you are involved in those issues every day, and you're used to making decisions every day, and also thinking about those long-term issues that might be arising. So if you do that in a program manager, or if you do that in higher levels within NASA, a very small move by a program manager or somebody higher up in the organization is a big move to the person on the receiving end down into the organization or on a project. So you just got to realize the effect that your decisions can have on people, that are recipients of those decisions. So one decision you make in a program, you're affecting 40 to 60 project managers. That's a pretty big impact. So you need to be careful on those decisions that are program-wide.